There are moments in human connection that feel almost invisible from the outside, yet deeply powerful on the inside. You may have experienced one without fully understanding it. You said something simple, unplanned, and suddenly the energy shifted. Her expression softened, her breathing changed, and for a brief second, something real surfaced before she could hide it again. That moment matters more than most people realize. What's often misunderstood is that going deeper in connection isn't about saying more words or using clever lines. It's about reaching a place inside another person that feels authentic, safe, and unexpectedly understood. When that happens, the body often responds before the mind has time to analyze it. That response isn't random. It comes from a sense of being truly seen. One of the most powerful ways this happens is through what can be called specific awareness. Most people are used to hearing general compliments. They hear them so often that they barely register anymore. But when someone notices something subtle, a small habit, a quiet pattern, or a moment of hesitation that usually goes unseen, it creates a different kind of impact. It tells the brain, this person is paying attention to who I really am, not just what I show on the surface. From a psychological perspective, this kind of attention can lower emotional defenses. The brain is constantly filtering information, deciding what is safe and what is not. When something feels overly familiar or rehearsed, it gets dismissed quickly. But when something feels accurate and unexpected, it interrupts that filter. It creates a pause, and in that pause, a deeper connection has a chance to form. There is also an important emotional layer here. Many people move through life feeling partially unseen. They present a version of themselves that feels acceptable while keeping more vulnerable parts hidden. When someone gently recognizes one of those hidden layers without judgment, it can create a sense of relief. Not dramatic or overwhelming, but quiet and meaningful, like something inside finally being acknowledged. This is why observation matters more than performance. Instead of trying to impress, the focus shifts to understanding. Instead of filling every moment with words, there is value in noticing, in listening, and in allowing space for the other person to feel comfortable being themselves. These are small shifts, but they have a significant impact on emotional safety. Another layer of connection comes from listening beyond what is said. People often communicate on two levels at once. There is the story they are telling, and then there is the emotion underneath that story. The surface words may sound casual, even light, but the emotional tone can reveal something deeper. Learning to recognize that difference is an important skill in building meaningful relationships. When someone gently reflects that deeper emotion without pressure or intensity, it can feel surprisingly grounding. It shows that they are not just hearing the words, but understanding the feeling behind them. This kind of response should always be respectful and careful because emotional safety depends on trust. When done with sensitivity, it can help someone feel supported rather than exposed. In terms of emotional well-being, these moments of being seen and understood are essential. They contribute to a sense of connection, which is a key part of mental health. Humans are naturally wired for connection, and when that need is met in a healthy way, it can reduce stress, improve mood, and create a stronger sense of belonging. At the same time, it's important to remember that genuine connection cannot be forced. It grows naturally when both people feel comfortable and respected. Trying too hard or pushing too quickly can have the opposite effect, creating tension instead of trust. That's why patience and awareness are so important. There is also a physical aspect to connection that is often overlooked. Simple things like proximity and presence can influence how safe or comfortable someone feels. Being physically close while still respecting boundaries can create a sense of warmth and awareness. The body responds to these subtle cues even before the mind fully processes them. This doesn't mean rushing into physical contact. In fact, slowing down often creates a stronger sense of connection. Allowing space, being present, and respecting that space can help the other person feel more in control and more at ease. That sense of control is a key factor in emotional comfort. From a health perspective, emotional safety and physical awareness are closely linked. When someone feels safe, their body relaxes. Breathing becomes more natural, tension decreases, and communication flows more easily. When someone feels pressured or misunderstood, the opposite happens. The body becomes tense, guarded, and less open to connection. Understanding these responses can help create healthier interactions. It shifts the focus from trying to get a reaction to creating an environment where genuine reactions can happen naturally. This approach is not only more respectful, but also more sustainable in building meaningful relationships. What all of this points to is a simple but powerful idea. Real connection is not about technique. It's about presence, attention, and respect. It's about being willing to understand another person without trying to control the outcome. When that happens, even small moments can become meaningful. As you reflect on this, consider how often people move through conversations on autopilot, focusing on what to say next rather than what is actually happening in the moment. Slowing down, paying attention, and responding with care can completely change the experience for both people. These are not dramatic changes, they are quiet adjustments in awareness and intention, but over time they can lead to deeper, healthier, and more genuine connections. And in a world where many people feel unseen, that kind of connection can make a real difference. In many relationships and everyday interactions, there is a subtle difference between simply exchanging words and actually feeling understood. That difference often shapes how safe, calm, or open someone feels in your presence. When people talk about connection, what they are often responding to is not intensity or charm, but emotional clarity and consistency. A person feels more at ease when communication is steady and respectful, especially when emotional cues are recognized without being exaggerated or ignored. For example, someone may say something lightly, but their tone, timing, or pauses might suggest there is more underneath. In healthy communication, the goal is not to expose or challenge that hidden layer, but to acknowledge it gently if it naturally becomes relevant. This creates a sense of emotional safety, where nothing needs to be forced or decoded under pressure. Another important aspect of human interaction is pacing. Conversations that move too fast emotionally can feel overwhelming, even if the intentions are good. When things slow down naturally, people often feel more comfortable opening up at their own pace. This is especially important in emotional or sensitive topics, where trust builds gradually rather than instantly. From a psychological standpoint, the nervous system plays a key role in how connection is experienced. When someone feels safe, their body shifts into a calmer state. Breathing becomes deeper, facial muscles relax, and speech becomes more natural. This is not something that can be controlled consciously. It happens automatically when the environment feels supportive. On the other hand, when someone feels rushed, judged, or emotionally pressured, the body responds with subtle tension and withdrawal. This is why presence matters more than performance. Being fully present means listening without preparing a response in advance and observing without trying to steer the conversation in a specific direction. It allows the interaction to unfold naturally, which often leads to more meaningful understanding between both people. In healthy communication, silence also has value. Many people feel the need to fill every gap in conversation, but silence can actually create space for reflection. In that space, thoughts and emotions settle, and what someone truly feels may become clearer. Comfortable silence is often a sign of emotional ease, not disconnection. It is also important to recognize that every person carries experiences that shape how they respond to attention, closeness, and emotional openness. Some people may take longer to trust, not because they are distant, but because they are careful. Others may open up quickly but still have internal boundaries that are not immediately visible. Respecting these differences is part of building emotionally healthy interactions. A key principle in emotional well-being is not to interpret every reaction as something to influence or manage. Instead, it helps to see reactions as natural expressions of someone's internal state. A shift in tone, a pause, or a change in eye contact is not a signal to correct or control, but an invitation to be more attentive and considerate. When communication is approached with this mindset, it becomes less about outcome and more about understanding. There is no need to win a moment or create a strong impression. Instead, the focus shifts toward creating clarity and ease. This reduces pressure on both sides and allows authenticity to emerge more naturally. One of the most overlooked parts of emotional health in relationships is self-awareness. How you speak, how quickly you respond, and how you handle silence all influence the emotional tone of an interaction. People often mirror the energy they receive. When communication is calm and grounded, it encourages calmness in return. When it is rushed or uncertain, it can create confusion or hesitation. This is why consistency is often more meaningful than intensity. A steady, respectful presence over time builds trust more effectively than moments of strong emotional display. Trust is not created in a single interaction. It develops through repeated experiences of reliability and understanding. At a deeper level, many human interactions are shaped by a desire to feel accepted without needing to perform or pretend. When someone feels they can simply be themselves without judgment, their emotional defenses naturally soften. This creates a more genuine form of connection, one that is based on acceptance rather than expectation. It is also worth noting that emotional awareness is not about analyzing every detail of a conversation. Overthinking can actually reduce natural flow. Instead, it is about staying grounded in the present moment and noticing when something feels meaningful without trying to overinterpret it. Healthy connection is not built through techniques or strategies. It grows through attention, patience, and emotional respect. When these elements are present, communication becomes easier, misunderstandings reduce, and both people feel more comfortable being open. As we move toward the final part, we will bring these ideas together into a more complete understanding of how presence, emotional awareness, and respectful communication shape deeper and healthier human connection. In the final layer of understanding human connection, it becomes important to bring everything back to something simple and grounded. Real emotional safety is never created through tricks, signals, or carefully timed actions. It grows from sincerity, respect, and the ability to stay present with another person without trying to control their response or interpret every reaction as a hidden system to decode. When people feel emotionally safe, their nervous system naturally settles. This is not abstract psychology, it is a measurable shift in the body. Heart rate becomes steadier, breathing becomes more even, and the mind stops scanning for threat or judgment. In that state, communication becomes clearer and more honest. But when someone feels uncertain, pressured, or emotionally analyzed, the body shifts in the opposite direction. Even if words sound correct, the feeling underneath becomes tense. A healthy connection does not depend on intensity, it depends on stability. Many people mistakenly associate depth with emotional highs, strong reactions, or moments that feel charged. But in reality, sustainable emotional closeness is usually quiet. It is built in ordinary conversations where both people feel respected, where silence is not uncomfortable, and where there is no hidden pressure to respond in a certain way. One of the most important aspects of emotional maturity is understanding boundaries. Every person has an internal space that belongs only to them. That space includes their thoughts, memories, insecurities, and unspoken feelings. When someone chooses to share parts of that space, it is an act of trust, not something to be analyzed or directed. Respecting that choice means allowing the other person to decide how much they want to reveal and when. Sometimes in communication, people unintentionally move too quickly into emotional depth. They assume that noticing subtle cues or interpreting feelings automatically creates closeness. But true closeness does not come from interpretation alone. It comes from consent, timing, and mutual comfort. Without those, even accurate emotional insight can feel intrusive instead of connecting. This is why emotional awareness must always be paired with restraint. Not everything that is noticed needs to be spoken. Not every observation needs to be turned into a reflection. Sometimes the most respectful response is simply to remain steady, listen fully, and allow the other person to guide the level of depth in the conversation. This creates a sense of safety, where nothing is being taken from them emotionally and nothing is being forced. Another key part of healthy interaction is accountability and communication. It is easy to become focused on interpreting others, but equally important is recognizing your own impact. The way you respond, the pace you set, and the emotional weight of your words all shape the environment between you and another person. When someone feels that their experience is being centered rather than redirected, trust naturally grows. It is also important to understand that emotional connection is not something to chase or engineer. When people try to create specific reactions, they often miss the actual human being in front of them. Real connection happens when curiosity replaces expectation. Instead of thinking about how to achieve a response, the focus shifts to understanding what the other person is actually experiencing in that moment. In that sense, emotional health in relationships is closely tied to humility. It requires accepting that you do not fully know what someone is feeling unless they choose to express it. Even then, understanding is partial and evolving. This mindset reduces assumptions and creates space for genuine dialogue rather than projection. There is also a quiet strength in consistency. People often remember how they felt around someone more than what was said. If interactions are steady, respectful, and free from emotional pressure, the body begins to associate that person with safety. If interactions are unpredictable or overly intense, the body may remain guarded, even if the intention is positive. A meaningful connection does not require constant emotional depth. It requires reliability, attention, and the ability to stay grounded even when emotions fluctuate. In real life, people are not always expressive or open. They carry stress, distraction, and personal history into every interaction. Recognizing this helps reduce misinterpretation and encourages patience. As this understanding deepens, communication becomes less about decoding and more about experiencing. Instead of analyzing every gesture or pause, there is more appreciation for the simplicity of being present with another person. That presence, when genuine, is often enough to create a sense of calm connection without needing anything additional. In health awareness terms, this kind of emotional balance is beneficial for both mental and physical well-being. Reduced relational stress supports better emotional regulation, improves sleep quality, and lowers chronic tension in the body. When relationships feel safe rather than uncertain, the nervous system spends less time in alert mode and more time in recovery and stability. Ultimately, what matters most in any form of human connection is not how deeply you can analyze someone, but how safely they feel in your presence. Safety does not mean perfection. It means predictability, respect, and emotional honesty without pressure. When people feel safe, they open naturally. When they feel observed too intensely, they close. When they feel accepted without condition, they relax into authenticity. These responses are not things to manipulate or trigger. They are natural outcomes of how the human nervous system responds to respect and emotional clarity. So the real shift is not about learning techniques. It is about unlearning the idea that connection must be engineered. Instead, it is about returning to something simpler, listening fully, speaking honestly, respecting boundaries, and allowing space for another person to be exactly where they are without trying to move them somewhere else. When that becomes the foundation, communication stops feeling like strategy and starts feeling like understanding. And in that space, relationships become not only more meaningful, but also healthier, calmer, and more human.